I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the case of the accused Gilgo Beach, Long Island serial killer. It's a case that has taken decades to develop and one where many never thought there would be a trial, but it's going to happen. Here's the story. Along the windswept shores of Long Island, a dark secret slept beneath the sand. For more than a decade, the remains of young women, escorts, mothers, daughters were unearthed near Gilgo Beach. Their lives silenced and their stories buried. The community was haunted by whispers of a calculating predator, someone who blended into suburban life while carrying out unimaginable acts of violence. Investigators pieced together a chilling puzzle: burner phones, burlap wrappings, and digital trails leading back to an unsuspecting home. The suspect, once seen as ordinary, was anything but. In court, prosecutors describe a monster hiding in plain sight. Neighbors recall a man who waved, smiled, and kept his secrets buried deep. As the trial looms, Gilgo Beach remains more than a crime scene. It is a graveyard of innocence and a reminder of how evil can live quietly among us, masked by the comfort of normalcy. I remember when this story was breaking, when all these bodies were turning up on Gilgo Beach, and it was shocking. And it was a case like, what's going on here? Like, is there a serial killer on the loose? We need to catch him. And then all of a sudden, the case went seemingly cold, where there was no activity. And then every once in a while, the people would be drumming up some noise about why isn't anything happening. And then we'd hear, well, someone else is taking over the investigation. Things are going to happen. And still, it took so long. But then finally, we got word from the DA, Ray Tierney. Take a listen.
My office filed a superseding indictment charging the defendant Heuermann with a 7th charged murder in the 2nd degree for the murder of Valerie Mack, which occurred in 2000. I remind everyone that all of these cases and all of these murders are just allegations, and we look forward to proving them in court. As I've previously stated, the work of the Gilgo Task Force is ongoing and continuing, and when I said that, I meant what I said. The defendant is now charged with the murder of 7 young women: Sandra Castilla from 1993, Valerie Mack from 2000, Jessica Taylor from 2003, Maureen Brainerd Barnes from 2007, Melissa Bartholomew from 2009, Megan Waterman from 2010 in June, and Amber Costello from September of 2010.
It took a while to get all 7 of those charges, superseding indictment after superseding indictment, but now you hear it. And he's going to be tried for all 7 at the same time. But it took so long to get there, which brings us to our first question in our investigation tonight, which is an important one, right? How did they catch the accused killer? Right? It took long. Why did it take so long? But how did they end up catching the accused killer? Here to help answer that question, forensic death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan. He's also the host of the extremely popular Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan podcast. Also joining us, former New York police officer, retired police lieutenant, commanding officer of the Nassau County Police K-9 Unit, Mike Gould, is with us. Great to have both of you here. Before we start talking about it, I want to listen to a little bit more from the DA, because he has provided some of the details through the years. Let's take a listen.
The murderer, the defendant Heuermann, he got a cell phone and a burner phone, which is prepaid and anonymous. And for each of the murders, he got an individual burner phone, and he used that to communicate with the victims. Then shortly after the death of the victims, he then would get rid of the burner phone. And right away in December of 2012, FBI CAST analysts, special agents with the CAST unit of the FBI, they immediately began looking at that cell site data. They compared the victims' phones with the burner phones, and they immediately honed in on some similarities, specifically in the Massapequa Park area, and they looked at an area of a confluence of 4 cell towers. And they realized that this had significance because the perpetrator of these crimes was probably located within this area at or around the times of the murder. The FBI also managed to do that for an area in Midtown Manhattan. There was a hair recovered from Maureen Brainerd Barnes from a belt buckle that was around her legs. With regard to Megan Waterman, there were 3 hairs recovered from her, one from around her head area, one from around her leg area in the burlap, and then there was one caught in between the tape. And that was recovered. Amber Costello also had a significant hair that was recovered during the time of the recovery. There was an abandonment sample obtained from the defendant via the pizza box, and the pizza that was in the pizza box, a DNA profile was obtained from that pizza. Subsequent to the defendant's arrest, a buccal swab was taken of the defendant. A DNA profile was obtained from that buccal swab, and the buccal swab of the defendant matches the DNA profile from that of the abandonment sample in the pizza box. A first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche with a very unique feature that was between it's a pickup truck, so it was between the cab and the bed, and that was identified. Again, that was back in 2010. But it wasn't until March of 2022 that database was searched by the task force, and this individual was identified. That individual was Rex Heuermann, the defendant.
All right. I'll start with you, Mike Gould. This case, for more than a decade, we were waiting, but it seems a lot of the information was there in the beginning. If you're talking about cell phones and a very unique vehicle.
Yeah, Vinny, thanks for having me. Yeah, so this is something very familiar to me. I'm very familiar with Gilgo Beach. In fact, ironically, I used to train police dogs all along there because it's desolate. And it's a great place to train dogs, particularly cadaver dogs. So that was in the late 90s, of course. But what happened in this case, since 2010, when the first victim was found by a cadaver dog, one of my colleagues in the Suffolk County Police Department, who was really terrific dog handler and had a great dog, was able to find the first victim. So, but then it went cold. There was a lot of allegations of police corruption. A police chief out here got fired and went to jail, not necessarily tied to this case, but he was implicated. He was the suspect of that. There was the district attorney. He went to jail. So there was a lot of things. This new task force, fortunately, a new police commissioner, a new DA, and they really reinvigorated the investigation. But if it wasn't for the cadaver dog that found them, they wouldn't have that evidence. So it was really tremendous what the work has done by the task force in the last few years of putting all this digital evidence together.
You know, Joseph Scott Morgan, so it seems that they use this, the Chevy Avalanche in coordination with some of the cell phone data, and they kind of zero in on this guy. And then, of all things, in the city of New York, to positively identify the suspect in their eyes, of course, it was pizza crust.
Famous phrase? I don't know. Yeah, so, yeah, you got to have the pie, man. And, yeah, you know, you think about this abandonment sample, you know, where it's anybody's game on at that point in time. You leave this behind. And, of course, you know, this is kind of unpleasant to say, I know, forgive me, but, you know, when you eat something, you're going to deposit you know, spittle on the crust that's remaining, assuming that that's where they got the sample from as opposed to touch DNA. And then they go in and they do the buccal mucosal swab to confirm that. You know, once you have that foundation of those DNA building blocks, you can go out and you can create a more robust case. you go back in and you recover these hair samples that are familial hair samples, and then you begin to think about this in terms of genetic genealogy, which we've heard a lot about over the past few years, haven't we, Vin? And so you build a case out with that. And here's the thing, along with the cellular data that you have, which deals in numbers, obviously, because you're pinging, you have specific locations, and then these astronomical numbers that you're talking about with DNA fingerprinting. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk. However, I think that it's a very difficult hill for the defense to climb.
Some of the other things that witnesses have said through the years in identifying the truck and the driver is that it was a very large man. This guy does not he's not going to disappear in a crowd. He's going to stick out. This guy is huge, and knowing what we know, we have a certain perception of him. But I think that's another part of this case that is very unique and very incriminating, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah, so he was described by a witness as an ogre, 6'6", so right, he stood out. But remember, he was like a very prominent, he lived literally 2 miles as the crow flies from the burial sites or the disposal sites. So, and he was a prominent architect, traveled back and forth to New York from Massapequa Park every day. And, it's kind of eerie to know that this person lived in this kind of bedroom community of Long Island, went to work every day, and they missed him. There was a lot of theories for the 10 or 12 years that transpired. There was a lot of theories, again, pointing to the police department, pointing to a bunch of different theories, but they never had this. So the police did magnificent. I agree with Joseph. This is a hard, it's a digital scientific case that they have to prove. I think it's going to be a battle of experts when it comes down to the DNA. And so yeah, I think they have a very strong case. The attorney is terrific. Michael Brown is very charismatic. He's like a pit bull, so to speak. And so we'll see how it ends up.
Absolutely. All right, guests are sticking around. Coming up next, what is the significance of the wife and daughter's DNA?
When we initially informed them about their husband, their father, they were shocked.
Donna Adelson was part of a conspiracy to kill her former son-in-law, Dan Markell.
He's not going to survive.
Oh my God!
Dan saw Donna as dangerous.
She's the matriarch mastermind.
She's just being a parent, not a killer.
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rollins. Season finale, Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific. And during the finale, don't miss an exclusive preview for the new season of Interview with a Killer, only on Court TV.
I just feel bad for his wife and children. It's unfortunate that he is what he is, but I just wish they would leave his family alone. Leave the child alone, leave his wife, children alone, and his wife. Let them have some peace. It's not their fault. You can't be responsible for other people's actions. We just gotta not give him all the credit. We just gotta put him on the back burner and get back to our lives and start worrying about our community again and our children and just step forward. Let the courts take care of him.
That's a neighbor of the accused serial killer, and think about being the family of an accused serial killer. What a tough spot that is. I mean, a difficult spot. The accused is behind bars, doesn't have to deal with people in the public on a day-to-day basis, but the family does. And it seems that the family is going to play a role in the trial as well. Let me show you why. We're talking about some DNA evidence that was recovered in this case from the wife and daughter. First, 4 of the victims had DNA from the suspect's wife or daughter. This is all from the memorandum of law from the state. Begin with the victim, Valerie Mack. Female hair on Valerie Mack. Inside garbage bags containing the victim, they matched Victoria, the daughter of the accused killer. Victim Maureen Bernard Barnes, female hair on her. The buckle of her belt restraining her lower body. That hair allegedly matches the suspect's wife, Asa. Victim Megan Waterman, 2 female hairs on her outside the head area and tape in the area of the head. That hair matching, according to the state, the suspect's wife, Asa. Then you've got Amber Costello, female hair on her, tape in the area of the head, allegedly matching the suspect's daughter. So with that in mind, the next question in our investigation relative to this evidence: what is the significance of the wife and daughter's DNA? Here to help with our investigation, back with us, forensic death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan, also the host of the podcast Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan, and also joining us, the attorney representing the children of the accused serial killer. It's Ves Mitev is with us. Ves and Joseph, great to have you both here. Let me ask you first, Ves, from your perspective, the legal perspective and the way this trial is going to go down, what is the significance of the wife and daughter's DNA here?
Well, it's an invitation for confirmation bias, which is exactly what Mike Brown and the defense argued in their motion to preclude it. Again, you have this never before held admissible, completely novel methodology as to this DNA that's now taking for the forefront in this case. And obviously in the court of public opinion, in the court of the press, in the media, it's a slam dunk. But legally, you have to have generally accepted scientific principles backing this methodology, which the defense, I think, correctly argues doesn't exist. So that's a gate stopper right out of the bag. So of course, now that the judge has made the ruling that the DNA is going to go in, they have to attack that at trial as well, saying, look, it's novel, it's never been held to be admissible before, this is magic, it's not science. So it's significant because the prosecution wants to stack on as many inferences on an inference as possible. And obviously the DNA that his daughter and wife have matching DNA strands on certain victims is confirmation bias. It runs completely afoul, I believe, and if this gets appealed after a trial to establish Court of Appeals precedent, but it's clearly important legally for the prosecution.
Joseph Scott Morgan, from an investigator's perspective, what is the significance of having the wife and daughter's hair on the victims, 4 of the victims here?
Well, it shows familial connection, I think, for one, which is a big part of this, right? Because where else would the hairs have originated from? You're talking very specific genetic connectivity here. They would approximate, positions in those vehicles perhaps, or in that vehicle, if that's the source of the origin, or from within the house where they're domiciled. What's really curious about this whole thing, Vin, is that if this case was being prosecuted in a Daubert state, it might reflect differently here because the standard is so much higher. And I concur with counsel here. New York is still caught up in the 1920s because they're using the Fry standard, which was literally established in the early 20s, I think. It's kind of a general acceptance thing. If the judge says that it's acceptable, it's acceptable. Daubert standard came along, I think, in 93, and that's how far behind New York is. As progressive-minded as they are, and they talk about how progressive they are, they're still caught up in this loop, and it's going to work against Heuermann, I think, in this particular case, and it might shock the courts into making some kind of decision about moving forward in the future relative to maybe adopting a Daubert standard instead of the Fry.
A different standard for permitting this type of new scientific evidence. Let me ask you, Ves, maybe explain further what you meant when you said confirmation bias.
Yeah, so the Court of Appeals in New York in 2020, in a case called People versus Williams, they said, the mere repetition of a questionable methodology by a judge doesn't make it generally accepted. In other words, you can repeat questionable things until they reach a form of authority. So that's what I meant. So you have the daughter's DNA, the wife's DNA, and now you're asking the jury to confirm, therefore, Mr. Heuermann's DNA also is there, and therefore, based on this completely novel methodology, you have to conclude, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that he did it as opposed to anyone else? I mean, what is the probability? And then that's when, people say that's the problem, as was just pointed out, with these types of novel, completely at the forefront, not peer-reviewed, not peer-tested methodologies, is that you're inviting confirmation bias. You have a suspect, you have a horrific fact pattern. Hard facts make bad law, right? That's the old adage. And so justice demands an answer, and the jury is invited to build an inference upon an inference, while at the same time disclaiming that and arrive at the verdict. And that's the confirmation bias. It must be it because the science that's untested says it is.
Joseph Scott Morgan, no one is going to believe that the daughter or the wife would be involved in this or are responsible for this. So what could the explanation potentially be that it's like the science is wrong here, that these hairs would not be connected to the wife and daughter? But if it is connected to the wife and daughter, no one's going to believe that they took part in this.
No, they're not going to believe that they had involvement. But again, back to this word of inference, you think about proximity. Proximity. Who had proximity where these hairs, kind of originated from? Well, they're domiciled at the same location. They use the same transportation modality. They're traveling along. So there's going to be an opportunity for these hairs to have attached themselves along the way. Here's another thing too. You begin to think about, and we're talking about nuclear DNA testing as opposed to mitochondrial DNA testing. They're going to be dazzled, and I can tell you this, course going to be dazzled. If you think the numbers on mitochondrial DNA are overwhelming, wait till they start to get into the nuclear DNA, because we're talking about, this is a methodology that is utilized in order to map the entire human genome. All right. So these numbers are going to be overwhelming. And when you begin to present this before a jury, and they're going to talk about numbers here, quintillion, things like that, they can't even, the human mind can barely begin to comprehend this. They're going to be overwhelmed, I think, by simple probability here when they hear this. The root of this, though, is going back to scientific plausibility. It has not been peer-reviewed in state, anywhere at this point in time where it's being utilized for this purpose alone. It's been used in the medical community for years and years. We do things in nuclear DNA testing to search for disease, origins of disease, these sorts of things. They're even using it to, you're talking about bringing back things like the woolly mammoth, that sort of thing, things that are so decayed and so far in our past. But it doesn't have a criminal application here. This is the first run out of the gate with it. That's what makes this so significant.
I guess the argument is you got to start somewhere, right? We'll see. This is going to be a hotly contested trial and issue within the trial. Vess is going to stick around. Joseph Scott Morgan, appreciate your valuable time. We'll see you again soon. Still to come, what about Shannan Gilbert? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the accused Gilgo Beach, Long Island serial killer, a case that began when a young woman called 911 and then disappeared. What was discovered next shocked the nation. Here's the story. Shannan Gilbert's frantic 911 call still echoes through the fog of Gilgo Beach. A terrified young woman running barefoot through the dark, pleading for help before vanishing into the marsh. Her disappearance in 2010 would expose a far deeper horror lurking along the Long Island coast. As police searched for Shannan, they unearthed the remains of other women, each with a hauntingly similar story, each discarded near the same desolate stretch of sand. Shannan's case, once dismissed as an accident, became the thread that unraveled a serial killer's hidden trail. Her family fought for years to prove she was more than a runaway escort, that her death was the beginning of a nightmare. Today, Shannan Gilbert's name stands as both a mystery and a warning. Her desperate call for help uncovered a darkness that had stalked the shores of Gilgo Beach for years, unseen but never forgotten. This entire investigation, case, story, however you want to term it, began with a 911 call from Shannan Gilbert, and it is a tragic and chilling 911 call. I want to play it for you right now.
State Police.
Yeah, there's somebody after me.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you?
There's somebody after me.
Okay, where are you?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you, ma'am?
I don't know. No, stop it, please. Stop it, please. Please stop it. Please stop it. No, please stop it. Please stop it. No.
Let me fix that.
Please stop it. No, please stop it, please. Please stop it. Please. No, what are you going to do to me? What are you going to do to me? Stop it.
Please, get him out of here.
These people are plotting to kill me.
That's how it all started. Now, as we mentioned, the suspected serial killer is being charged for a series of murders all at once. Take a look. Here's a list of the victims, the 7 victims. You've got Sandra Castillo from 1993, Valerie Mack from 2000, Jessica Taylor from 2003, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, 2007, Melissa Bartholomew, 2009, Megan Waterman, 2010, Amber Costello, 2010. There's a name missing from that list, connected to how all this started. Brings us to the next question in our investigation. What about Shannan Gilbert? What about Shannan Gilbert? She's not considered a victim in any of this. There's no evidence connecting her to the suspected Long Island serial killer? All right, here to help answer the question about what about Shannan Gilbert is the attorney representing the family of Shannan Gilbert. It's John Ray. John, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Great to see you again, catch up. Fill us in here. What's going on? Will there be any sense of justice or an answer for Shannan Gilbert?
I believe there will be an answer that, no matter how strongly supported it is by evidence, will not be accepted by everyone as the true answer. Just like the killer in England, the strangler, people just still think that somebody else did it, or the bullet that shot Kennedy, was there more than one bullet? There'll always be those who say that. But we are headed toward a trial. And we just on Friday received a decision. This is breaking news for you, that we sued Dr. Peter Hackett in the man in Oak Beach who had Shannan in his home and medicated her that morning, and we sued him for being responsible for her death. That lawsuit has been pending all these years. It was the lawsuit that enabled me to get the 911 tapes that everybody talks about, and to get those released to the public. That lawsuit, the Dr. Hackett's lawyer, who was a former partner of the district attorney Thomas Spoda, he made a motion to dismiss our case called summary judgment motion. And just on Friday, we learned that we won the motion. He threw out their motion to dismiss, and we are going to trial. So there will be some justice that emerges from all of that.
Let me ask you this, John.
We'll pursue it right to the end.
What sort of information will you be able to access as a result of the civil case moving forward? Will you have an opportunity to depose people? Will you have an opportunity to get records that otherwise you might not be able to get?
I've subpoenaed the records of the Suffolk County Police Department's criminal file on this case, as well as the medical examiner's office. And in the past, they've always resisted it, saying that it's an open, active, ongoing investigation. We can't give these things up. But on May 13th, in 2022, the police commissioner and the head of the investigation, homicide Lieutenant Detective Kevin Byrer, announced at a public, at a press conference held at Suffolk County Community College that Shannan died of an unfortunate, tragic accident. The accident, which they do not define, they have no idea how this alleged accident occurred. Whoever heard of a homicide group of people from the police department making a conclusion without evidence? And they made that statement. So I said, look, if that's your position, it's a civil case. It's no longer a criminal case. It's an accident, so I want your file. They are fighting me in court as we speak to try to prevent me from getting that file, claiming that it's still an open, active, ongoing investigation when they've done absolutely nothing to pursue it. So we're going to fight to get that, and we're going to get other information as well. I can't depose anybody anymore because we're past that. We filed a note of issue, meaning we're ready for trial. And I've done my depositions. I have Dr. Peter Hackett, his family, neighbors. I've taken many depositions of different people.
Let me ask you this, though, John. Here's the question people are wondering. Is there any connection between your civil lawsuit and the accused Long Island, Gilgo Beach serial killer who's facing criminal charges for those 7 murders?
We have several witnesses who have connected Rex Heuermann with Oak Beach, and several who have connected him with Shannan Gilbert, as well as with the former corrupt police chief, James Burke. We have these witnesses, but they're all uncorroborated. So their testimony is not useful at this stage. That's the problem. But these people have come forward and connected them up. They're connected by geography. This girl is found in a graveyard of sex workers. She's a sex worker. And we have Dr. Michael Bodden, who said that she was strangled to death based upon the hyoid bone in her throat. And I worked with him on that autopsy. We have an enormous amount of evidence that connects him. And I just say, I wish I had time to we don't have it, but to say, all these people saying, well, the wife and the child, the hair, they're not involved. If you're going to convict Rex Heuermann because of hair that belongs to his family, why aren't you charging his family? The circumstantial evidence of their involvement with Rex Heuermann's murders and the bodies are overwhelming, but nobody goes after that. The police department has taken a very weird perspective of this entire case, from Heuermann to Hackett to Shannan Gilbert, and I'm going to pursue that at trial.
And bottom line here, we have about 30 seconds left here, John. What do you expect to learn during the course of your trial, or reveal or uncover?
God only knows. We have revealed so many things through the testimony of people and depositions and the like that, it's much of what we've revealed has largely been ignored, willfully so, I believe. There's just so much. I can't use it, nor will I, as a discovery device to just blow open an investigation by the police department. But I still say, from day one until now, the police department does not belong in this case. They've blown each case. They've now blown the Heuermann case by not charging the wife and making a person of interest, the daughter, in the case. When the wife goes on national TV and says, my husband, he's still my hero. Her hero? With all those murders, that could only mean one thing. She's either in it or she's some way connected to it. And they threw that out right at the beginning of their case. They blew the Shannan Gilbert case wide open by making a mess of it, so much so that we called for the intervention of the federal authorities and we were ignored. That's still the case today.
John Ray, great to catch up with you.
I can't do more than try the case.
We're out of time, unfortunately, for now, but obviously we will stay on the story. All right, coming up next, what is the accused killer's defense?
Everybody is presumed innocent in our country. There's a presumption of innocence.
I'm going to ask you a lot of intensely personal questions. How do you explain it? The worst crime anyone can imagine. Do you feel like you took the fall for this murder? Tell me in your own words, What happened? Let's get started.
Interview with a Killer. New season premieres Saturday, October 25th. Only on Court TV.
I bartend in Massapequa, which is just north of Massapequa Park. When I heard the name Rex Heuermann, and then I finally saw what he looked like, I said, I think I've actually served this guy before.
When Rex got arrested at Massapequa Park and I realized how close it was to my house, it was very crazy because I ended up seeing the address blowing up all over online, and my friend and I actually drove to the house, and we realized it's like 5 minutes away from where I live, which was crazy just knowing the fact that somebody capable of doing something like that lived so close to me, and all this time nobody had any idea about it.
There was a lot of shock in that neighborhood, let me tell you. This is a nice neighborhood, a real nice neighborhood in Massapequa Park on Long Island, where the accused killer was living with his family. Now, I want you to take a listen to his attorney. We've been talking about it. He's got a very good attorney, a very credible attorney. Here's Michael J. Brown talking about his client.
It's extremely circumstantial in nature. In terms of speaking to my client, the only thing I can tell you that he did say as he was in tears was, I didn't do this. We obviously don't have any evidence. This is the beginning of the case. Everybody is presumed innocent in our country. There's a presumption of innocence, and we're looking forward to fighting this case in a court of law.
So a lot of the evidence has now gotten into the hands of the defense, and they understand what the prosecutor's case is, which brings us to the next question in our investigation. What is the accused killer's defense? What's the defense to this? Can take many different forms. We see it all the time here on Court TV. Here to help with our investigation is former New York police officer, retired police lieutenant, commanding officer of the Nassau County Police K-9 Unit, Mike Gould, and still with us, the attorney representing the children of the accused killer, Ves Matev, is with us. All right, Ves, how would you describe the defense here? What is the defense going to be in front of the jury?
The defense has a Sisyphean task ahead of them in light of the last two rulings by the judge in this case, which obviously denied the motion for separate trials and for the exclusion of the DNA, which we touched on earlier in the show. So, you know, anytime you have a defense like this, you want to almost atomize it. You want to break it down to every single instance. You don't want the big picture getting in front of the jury. You want to break down every single act, every single interaction, every single occurrence into its most, you know, black and white components, and taking into single frames, you know, from a bunch of single frames into the movie. The prosecution wants to show you a movie. They want to show you a story. They want to paint a picture, hence the adverse inferences upon adverse inferences that we talked about earlier. And that's why the DNA is so key to their case, because you have this completely novel, untested, previously inadmissible methodology now taking center stage in what is arguably the biggest trial in New York's history, certainly this century. So the defense's strategy is to do the exact same thing they've done at the hearings, but in front of a jury of his peers, which is to attack this methodology, how it was procured, the lack of credibility scientifically around it, and just to hammer the point that this is all circumstantial. At the end of the day, all you need is one, and you want to build the record for appeal. So this is a trial where I think we know where it's going, obviously at the trial level, but this is a trial where you have to build the record for appeal, because again, horrific facts usually make horrific law.
Now, another part of this case and this investigation was it took so long, and a lot of that had to do with the police. Take a look. Let's talk about James Burke. He's the former New York police, he's the police chief out there. This is all from Newsweek. Burke did not view the murder investigation as a high priority. He discouraged collaboration with other law enforcement agencies. He denied subpoenas for records related to cell phone towers. But this is the big one. He also faced internal investigations for allegations of drug use, engaging in relationships with sex workers. Did you hear that one? Engaging in relationships with sex workers. Who were the victims in all these, in this case? Sex workers, and other misconduct during his time as chief. He resigned in 2015, was federally charged for allegedly beating a man in handcuffs. Mike Gould, how concerned are you about what the jury might think if they find out about former Chief James Burke and his alleged relationships with sex workers?
Yeah, Yeah, Vinny, I think he will be if Michael Brown can introduce these stories. Yeah, he was a dirty cop, and he went to jail for police misconduct. So he was a suspect, at least in the eyes of the community. And he tarnished the reputation for 10 years of the good, hardworking people of the Suffolk County Police Department. So this story has been going around and round and round for years here on Long Island. So the jury pool, I think they're certainly going to take that into consideration. One point I wanted to make from that area of Jones Beach, Gilgo Beach, that's a notorious organized crime dumping ground because of its proximity to Kennedy Airport, the Belt Parkway. So as far as New York is concerned, you can drive 10 miles and dump a body. So that has been a dumping ground for 30 years. But to the question is, this is going to be a battle of the experts, DNA experts, new technology, and they're going to battle it out, and they have to establish reasonable doubt. That's what the defense attorney is going to do. He doesn't need to even put up a defense, but that's where they're going to attack this. But I still think it's an uphill battle for sure.
Yeah, I think we're all agreeing on that. Vess, so in looking at the case, to me it seems like it's what I refer to as reasonable doubt is the standard in every case. I get it, but some of the trials we cover here, the defense or the defense team is pointing the jury in another direction. That hey, there's suspicion over here, there's suspicion over there. To me, is there any of that? Do you suspect there'll be any of that? Could it be pointed at the people who are in charge of the investigation themselves?
Yeah, so if you're out here on the North Fork and in Suffolk County especially, everybody knows the players that were just referenced, the former DA, the former police chief. There's a former gentleman serving time, also connected tangentially. The last panelist referred to a doctor named Dr. Hackett. So certainly you could do that. I don't think that's Mike Brown's strategy. As he's always said, he gets straight to the point. And the point here is, again, that since it's a very, very decades-old case, the DNA evidence is completely novel, right? And it's the old adage, at some point, science becomes indistinguishable from magic. That's a nice little phrase, but that's literally the argument that he's making. You know, he's saying, basically, this is so novel, you cannot possibly, once you hear how they arrived at their conclusion, a reasonable juror could say, hey, maybe there's something more to this here. And again, I believe his strategy is to preserve the record for appeal, because if there's a trial on this, there's going to be an appeal on this, as sure as I sit here today.
Vess Matev, it's always great to have you on the program. Great to see you tonight. Mike Gould, obviously, on all the time as well. Thanks so much for your insight and your valuable time tonight. Now, every case, every trial has at least two sides, and I'm sure the accused killer will put on a very vigorous defense. The biggest problem, though, is all of the murders will be tried at once. And even if there may be doubt about one, will it be enough to raise doubt for all the cases, all the victims? Me, I doubt it. But you never really know until the case is tried. I've been surprised before. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.